So, Nicolo, to begin with, give us a little bit of personal background about how you got into photography, what brought you to documentary photography, and you now live in Colombia, and what took you to Colombia to cover this story?
Well, I actually was already living in Colombia. Photography started in Colombia. I was traveling after university, studied literature and philosophy in Italy, and then I moved to Latin America, traveling across Mexico, Central America, ended up in Colombia, and never moved again for many years. And at the beginning, it was a sort of sense of adventure and freedom, and like a will to explore different countries and different landscape and nature. And then little by little, I went deeper into like the social dynamics of Latin America. I made friends, and photography became a way to tell like the stories that I was living to my friends and my family in southern Colombia. I've been living in an indigenous community for a few years, and I always go back there. And that was almost 10 years ago, but I was not really into photography yet. Then I spent a few years in Europe, and I tried to like meet other photographers to get advices on how to move forward with this discipline, with the practice. And I did weddings as well, and then I went back to Colombia in 2014. And for 2 years, I still lived in this indigenous community in Putumayo, the border with Ecuador, where the Colombian Amazon begins. And I continued to photograph, but I really started to work as a photojournalist in 2016. And from there, I also started getting a few assignments from Washington Post, Bloomberg News, and organizations, and more clients. And since the beginning, I started to work on personal projects more than on assignments. And then are the assignments that brought me to the migration, because in 2018, I was already working quite regularly with a few major publications in Europe and the United States. And in Colombia, we were experiencing a peak of the Venezuelan exodus to Colombia.
Yes.
So I started to document that on assignments, and feeling frustrated for the short time that I had at disposal, I started to go back to the places where I was photographing for magazine and newspapers, to the point that I get more and more involved in the story, and it became also quite a bit my story, because following this migration in Latin America, I started in Colombia, but then I had to expand the vision and the project to Central America, other countries in South America, and then Mexico, United States, Canada. So since the last 3 years, I'm living nomadically, basically from Canada to Chile, working on assignment, of course, but mainly following the story and the people that I meet along their journey. Yeah.
What was it about migration that attracted you as the theme, as the topic that you wanted to cover?
Well, at the beginning, I was not wild about covering migration, to be honest, because I was working on another project about the consequences of the coal exploitation in Colombia on an indigenous community. So I was documenting malnutrition and like respiratory disease among the population, and I want to to keep focus on that project. And then I was working on assignment, and every time I felt that I was not, I was not honoring the story that I was photographing with such a short time. Sometimes I had one good picture, but then the rest was kind of more ordinary news photography. And so that at the beginning it was sort of frustration towards my photography. And then when I start spending more and more time with the people that I photograph, it was also a way to, I meet these people in a very crucial moment of their life, and sometimes it's dramatic, but still they open the door to their intimacy. I get to know like a family. If they live in a tent, they open their tent. So I felt because that's my approach to this practice also. So I wanted to spend more time, and also fleeing a place which is your place, your home, and your safe port. Theoretically, it's some of the harshest thing that can happen to a person. And I was surprised of the strength, the dignity of the people that I was photographing. And so, spending more time, I can be there, like when there is a moment when I can portray as I see them, so beautiful and strong, and heading towards something better, hopefully. And then families that I met them again along the journey, and I basically just got into the flows of migrants up and down the continent. And this now it's a sort of it's a responsibility that I feel towards myself and my work also. Of course, it's very hard to put an end to long-term project, but also I feel that there is still a lot to tell, and I want to take my time to do it properly, because I'm trying to build photography, to create photographs that can be a document and a memory of something that is determining the future of Latin America and the American society. And then it's a universal topic, and working on migration, I can work on what that means to live a childhood on the move, and the trauma that it's related to that, and what it means to die far away from home, to be born. So eventually it's a project that allows me to explore life and death and humanity, overall. And it's a way for me also to explore how I see things and to improve the way I listen to people, I look at people. So it's a very personal process that I try to explore while understanding and translating the complexities that I witnessed.
Yeah. So why don't you share your screen and take us through the edit that you've prepared to show of this work? And while you're doing that, just a reminder to folks in the audience, if you would like to ask a question, please put it into the Q&A box, and I'll ask that as we go along. Nicolo, there's actually a question to start with. Thinking about the religious community that you mentioned. Are the Mennonites a focus of this project?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I've never met one. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right.
I've been told many times that there is a religious component in my pictures. Right. And I accept that. I'm still trying to understand where it comes from, but being Italian, probably the answer is quite easy to find. But of course, there is more to explore in that regard as well.
Right.
So I'm going through a selection of pictures that are the very last chapter of the project Exodus, because the project started in 2018.
Right.
And this is the work that I've been producing during the past few months. So it's concentrated in Mexico and in part in Mexico-US border, and then in New York.
Right.
So I was in southern Mexico in February, and I was working on an assignment about the upcoming influx of asylum seekers from Central America. So I was at the border with Guatemala and Mexico. And when the assignment was done, like the end of Title 42 was approaching. So I decided to go to the northern border.
Can we
And
just explain for folks in the audience what Title 42 is in relationship to the US border?
So the Title 42 is 30-year-old statute that allows the government, the United States government, to expel migrants, asylum seekers, who are coming from a country where there has been an health emergency. So even though a country has the obligation to hear the asylum seekers' demands, being like the word in an health emergency, that statute that Trump kind of resuscitated allowed the government to expel migrants without hearing their demands. So that meant that many people crossing the US-Mexico border had been just expelled deep into Mexico or somewhere else in the border between United States and Mexico. Many of them were trying to cross again. So some were fortunate and could be accepted, but many were expelled. That's why eventually, there were more expulsion during the Biden administration than with Trump. So Title 42 was ending, and people were moving more and more across Mexico to reach the United States before the end of Title 42, because they didn't know what would have happened after that. So I met families traveling across Mexico with the train, the cargo train known as the Beast. I followed some of them across the border, and eventually, this kid is Fernanda. She's 5 years old. I met them on the train, and these are this same family. Here we are, Mariana, Fernanda, and Adriana. We met on the train, and then I lost trace with them because I took notes on my agenda, but the agenda followed the train, so I had no way to reach out to them. But then after a week or so, I met them again. Here we are with them in Ciudad Juarez. And when they decided to cross, they called me so that I could join them. So I walked with them across the border, and eventually they were accepted. Their asylum claim were heard, and now they are living in New York. And I was actually in New York when they were arriving, so I could also spend some time with them in New York. Here we have the train when it's already on United States soil. And this is a panoramic that this is part of a series of panoramic that I'm doing with a medium format camera, a digital camera.
So let's just explain the train, because the train is a character in a lot of photographic coverage of migrants on the border, because it's the way people move quickly to the border and so on. This is a freight train that travels between the US and Mexico. What's the system?
Well, initially, like years ago, I guess since the 80s, it was, train and migrants were sort of, it was that there was also a very visual connection between the train and the migrants. And in the 2000s, the train started at the very south of Mexico in the state of Chiapas. And now the Mexican government is doing a big project called the Maya train, which is a touristic train, and
Right.
the cargo train doesn't cross southern Mexico anymore. So people either take the train in Veracruz or in Mexico City. And
Right.
we call the Beast a sort of network of cargo train that cross Mexico, which is one of the biggest importer of goods for the United States. And of course that's the fastest, although it's not the safest way to reach the United States. I mean, the United States border for many
Right.
people, and it's a presence in this series because like in recently I've been focused a lot on the train. Here we have a group of migrants, asylum seekers from Guatemala, who were apprehended by police in New Mexico, and they were trying to fake that they were Mexican, because in case they were Mexican, they would just been expelled. In case of being Guatemalans, they would have been deported to Guatemala, so
Right.
they would have to cross Central America and Mexico
Right.
again.
Right. When you're with a group of migrants like this and you're covering them and that group of migrants is detained, are you detained by the authorities as well? How does that work, or what happens to you in that circumstance?
Well, I never crossed the border illegally,
Right.
at least the United States border.
Right.
In Central America, sometimes there are like strategies. Like you can go to Mexico, get a stamp, go back to Guatemala, and then cross with people. So that when you cross, you have already a stamp in the passport. But I don't do that in between United States and Mexico. So what I do is that I just cross legally into the
Right.
United States, and then I go to places I know where people are crossing. Sometimes I meet
Right.
the same people, sometimes I meet new people. I have to say, in general, CBP officer, Custom and Border Protections agents are pretty welcoming. I mean, they know that we are doing our job and we're
Right.
working on a public land, so they let us work. It's harder when people are being apprehended to get a dialogue with them,
Yeah.
because I mean, they are in a very, very tough moment. They know that they will be either deported or expelled. So, sometimes people cover their faces, so you understand that they don't want to be photographed. So you try to manage, that situation. During those months, it's March and April and some May, that I was working in Ciudad Juarez and in other places in northern Mexico. The cities were so overwhelmed with asylum seeker and migrants that charity shelters had no capacity anymore. So people were living in abandoned buildings. They had no access to sanitation. They had no access to potable water. And I was impressed by the way they still try to keep, this place as clean as possible, as comfortable as possible. But still, it's like the northern border in Mexico is a very, very dangerous place. And that's, that's a conversation that we might also want to bring out today. People, when they are in northern Mexico, they are not in a safe port. They are in a very, very dangerous situation. Children, of course, they are living with their family in these shelters, but sometimes the parents go in the city trying to get food or try to earn some money with some, day-to-day job. So children are exposed to, either, best case scenario is it's lack of food, but they are also exposed to violence and so sometimes people, even if they want to wait, that now there is an application called CBP One, so that people can apply for the asylum claim online through the app and wait in Mexico or Guatemala. But people, even if they want to wait and do things, like in an ordinary way, sometimes they feel forced to flee because the situation is too dangerous. So it happens that, like when I was in Ciudad Juarez, just after a few days I was there, 40 migrants died in a detention center because you may have heard about it. There were dozens of migrants jailed in this detention center, and they were fearing deportation, and many of them are fearing, that they will be deported to those countries where they have been receiving death threats, where their relatives have been killed by gangs, or where they are politically persecuted. So they were really fearing to be deported, and to force the guard to open the jail's doors, they lit fire on a mattress. So hoping that the guards would have opened the door and free them, but the guards just left. So people died asphyxiated. And during the day after the tragedy, the people I were talking to, they were just saying, we don't want to die here, like we have to move on. And like this is the Tonito family now in Queens. When I finally could meet again with them, and like they were in the metro trying to understand, like the surrounding, and they were living in a shelter, like in a hotel that the city of New York is paying for, while they wait for their documents to be processed, because until their documents are not processed, they cannot work even if they want. So their children are going to school now, but they're still not able to be independent and get a job and pay for their own like for their own accommodation. This is some of this picture might probably end up like in the larger project. While I was working on creating these images, I was also working on assignments, because that's the way I'm trying to fund my work. So I was working for NBC News, for Bloomberg, for the Washington Post.
And when you get assignments like that, what are you being assigned to cover? What are they asking you to do?
Well, I was in southern Mexico in February when I decided to move north. I reached out to all the editors I regularly work with, and telling them that I was working on this story, so that they know that I am producing content, and they also know that in case there is some news event that they are interested, I'm in the region. And then I was in Ciudad Juarez, the tragedy happened, so I just reached out to them, and I covered the news, which is often, I would say, most of the cases, very frustrating, because for example, I was documenting this tragedy, of course, after it happened, so I was documenting kind of police operations. I was documenting migrants gathering in front of the detention center protesting. And I was having a dialogue with my editors, also saying, hey, okay, this is happening now. It's news that we, of course, have to cover, but this is part of a larger drama that we should cover in a deeper way, And some of them are willing to do that. Others are, are interested into covering that news and nothing more. And of course, especially with this kind of slow approach that I have, it's hard for me to produce images that I feel can have a longer life, and as I was mentioning, eventually become a sort of document. But In other cases, I just keep in touch with them. And for example, one of the editors I work quite regularly with is Marie Monteleone at Bloomberg News, which now is signing for a new department at Bloomberg, where the photographer keeps the rights on the photographs, and they are willing to do mid-long-term kind of stories.
Right.
So even though I produce different kind of images for her, at some point when I was in New York and I was also photographing this family, we decided to work on a story together and giving more space to this family story. And actually, they were in New York. It was easy also to have a journalist doing interviews, and then we did the caption together, for example.
Right.
And that's
Right.
something that is very important to me because, like when there are these big news event, we are a lot of photographers in the same spot.
Yeah.
It's extremely chaotic, which is, like somehow it's also sometimes driving the photographer to look for better pictures and put an
Yeah.
order to that chaos. But then, like images that we are producing and sending within few hours where the caption are people cross the border, and I don't want that. I think
Right.
that I think that it's not honoring what these people are living. I want, like that we know who they are and that we can give a name to them. And this is the only way then that I've thought, well, probably not the only way, but this is where when we add important information that turn a photograph into a document, and we know
Right.
the story behind this family. So for example, for this picture, we were asking Mariana and Adriana how they were feeling in that moment and how looking that photograph they were feeling. So we were adding those emotions in the captions, and of course that creates another kind of journalism, and more empathetic, if you want.
Yeah.
So I was documenting. Sorry, you had
I was going to say that a question from, I'll bring in some questions from the audience as we go along, and I've got a couple more as well. But question from Adrian: when you're assigned to cover these news events, and you said there were lots of photographers there in the same place and lots of reporters in the same place, are these local photographers and journalists, or are they international photographers and journalists who have come in to cover the story?
Well, I would say most of the cases it's local photographers.
Right.
Also because like news agencies are those agencies who still have staff photographers, and so
Right.
like they have a staffer in the city or in that border. And then for big news event, of course, there are like international journalists that are covering migration since many years, and they go and they also photograph either for their personal project, either on assignment. I'd say it's mixed, but it's mainly local photographers.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a big personal project for you that you've been working on in addition to the assignments and the coverage. Yeah. So a question from Daniel: where has this work been published? And you referred to this, what you were showing us, as kind of the final chapter in the story. What are your plans for publication and dissemination? How are you thinking about getting the story out?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's it's an important conversation. So this is not the final. It's the most recent chapter. And this work, the Exodus in general, has been published dozens of times. But for example, for the first 2 years, between 2018 until 2020, it was not published. So I was using the precarious income of the assignments to produce the story, and then it started being published more and more. Now some of these photographs have been ended in this mid-large publication with Bloomberg,
Yeah.
And there are other few publications with magazines and a newspaper also upcoming. Like there is a magazine which has, they go and basically they are booked for many months because
Yeah.
they choose long-term stories for their editorials. So this will probably be published with them in January. So I'm
Right.
going to add a new chapter because I'm going back to the United States on assignment to continue to document these and other families that I am following, the first steps of the integration process. And like sometimes it's not a publication, sometimes it's an exhibition.
Yeah.
And I try to get the story out also through this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Like, Seven Insider is amazing, and it is an example of that. Like I was working on assignment during those months, and then when infamous Title 42 ended, I was in Guatemala working on other assignments, so I could not be there photographing. Of course, I wanted to be there because like when Title 42 ended, there was a massive
Right.
cross at the border, but at the same time, it was also packed with photographers, and those are not the situation that I really feel comfortable with. Like either for myself, either for the people I photograph. And during those days, like in mid-May, during that week, the news was Title 42 ended, massive mass crossing. And that's what was an headline in many newspaper and also in some magazine. So that in a way postponed the time of my work to be published.
Yeah.
Because we already did a lot about migration, we have to wait a few months. So actually, I had a couple of publications which were already confirmed, and then the editors had to take the decision to postpone it for a few months. But at this point, I'm also used to that, so I'm trying not to be obsessed with that sort of confirmation from publications, because also like this is a project that has been, as I said, published dozens and dozens of time now in the last 3-4 years. So I also understand that like if a major platform publish the full project last year, I mean, maybe they want to wait a little bit in order to do a follow-up. But also I have to say that when they did, I really appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate that because I can get published and also, like start getting paired with the cost of producing the work, because I mean, it has to be sustainable. But I'm also pleased because it's a way to give, to trust the readers also, like I know that we already published that, but this is an important follow-up. And often when eventually the editors decide to publish it anyway, then it's very nice to receive emails from readers that sometimes the editors forward to me, where the readers thank, like the editors for the publication. And I mean, this is actually something that, like was in our conversation also when we have spoken before. Like sometimes news events are sort of magnet for photographers and journalists and the editorial world, which somehow is being fed with massive tragedies and horrors and dramas. And sometimes in those situations, I have wondered whether we are producing valuable information to the readers, or if we are somehow contributing to a political agenda and the political propaganda who uses these tragedies and the migration especially as an instrument for consent.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that not just covering migration. Now I'm recalling a coverage that I did in Colombia many years ago. There was a
Before you go into that, let's dig into that point a little bit more, because this was a really interesting theme that you brought up as we were preparing, and that is the relationship between media coverage and politics. And if I understood you correctly, you were concerned that, say, for example, at the end of Title 42, which was controlling, from the American perspective, migration across the border by expelling people, the coverage which showed large numbers crossing the border could be used to underpin the idea that there was a threat of a mass of people ready to cross the border and, quote, invade the United States. Is that what you're getting at? Is that these images can play into these different narratives?
I don't know if I want to get to that, because I'm very cautious with this kind of affirmation, because I don't know. It's really, really hard to prove it. It's the feeling that I have is that of course there is a massive crossing. Then there are new policies. The crossing slow down exponentially. And this is a kind of validation that a government is doing something, to mitigate a crisis, for example. But in the media perspective, that also means, and I'm also thinking in terms of, kind of editorial business plan, so the world of the media is then putting a lot of, investing a lot of work and money during those days. So we are covering those massive crossings a lot. And then we have done migration too much. So we have to wait a little bit to do that. But now it's very important that we document what's going on, because of course the crossing and the flow apparently slowed down. But I'm reaching out to colleagues and other migrants I'm in touch with who were deported and now are moving again, that at the southern border in Mexico, there are a lot of people, and when the rain season will end in Central America, in Panama, where people cross the Darien Gap, probably the cross will increase. And then it's also that, the human traffickers, the cartels, their business model adapt much faster to any capability of any government to react to it. So if the border is safer on a US government perspective, if you want, those traffickers will figure out probably more remote, more dangerous path. They will charge more money to the migrants, to the asylum seeker, in order to guarantee or fake guarantee them that they will get into the country, the United States. So I sense that, I don't have an answer, but this is something that I've been questioning a lot. Also, for example, there was this tragedy: 40 migrants died in the detention center. Then the people who were sheltering and living in the street in Ciudad Juarez, they gathered in front of the detention center. They built a memorial altar. And, during those days, I sensed that probably their protest and their demands, even the altar and their manifestation would have lasted probably, 2-3 days. But since that was such a major news and TV stations were continuously coming and continuously, feeding the news, so the other way around, I sense that, that situation lasted longer because there was more attention from the press. So, of course, this is a subjective word, but like we always are concerned and we always discuss between colleagues, how much do we change a situation with our presence?
Right.
That can also be a collective,
Yes.
like a sort of collective kind of even a sort of collective psychosis, if you want, because oh, there is a major tragedy. So the readers will want to know about that, even
Yeah.
more than what is needed. So we will grasp and grasp informations. And those are situations where, like radio station, TV station, photographers, videographers, we are all there. So that's also overwhelming for the people we are interviewing, But
Yeah.
and then there is, like a sort of also collective reaction to those tragedy where, like people collectively say, oh, such a tragedy happens. Maybe if we cross in mass now, we will be accepted, So
Right.
we're sort of feeding, it's not false information, but it's an information that it's very intertwined with the way with the way we cover it, and
Yeah.
eventually maybe, I don't know, but that's what I was wondering, maybe we are creating an event that is different now. And it's different because like it's of course a collective event. It's not just a family,
Yeah.
but we are also a collective of collectors of
Yeah.
informations.
Yeah.
So
I think it's
that's
I think it's a really crucial issue, because what you're getting at is, for the rest of us, obviously not for the people who are involved, who are actually crossing the border and the border security and so on, but for the rest of us, we're not present at that location. Our knowledge of that situation is quite literally mediated. It's represented to us through these images, through these narratives, through these stories. And if the amount of coverage suddenly mushrooms at a particular time, and that's linked to a political event, we're creating a sense about what that event is. In other words, the coverage is helping to constitute the event. It's helping to construct the event here. And I sense that one of the things that you were talking about and were highlighting as a tension was, a lot of the coverage has focused on the actual moment of the crossing of the border, claiming asylum, being detained.
yes,
But that's just a tiny, tiny part of the story. There's the whole backstory of getting to the border. There's the whole forward story of what happens after the border, and that's what you're trying to cover. Whereas just
yeah.
focusing on the visible moment of confronting and crossing the border is simply a microcosm of something much larger. Is that one of the tensions that you're
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
get to?
I think so. And somehow photography, like still photography, s- like is able to give more suspension and more emotion to a moment, so that like even in those situations, if we are able to work properly, maybe we can produce
Right.
some lasting document. But in the same time, like it's also about the logistic in the place. So maybe there are 4 photographers or 5 photographers with the same fixer going the same time, taking photographs to the same group of people on the
Yes.
train, like
Yes.
so of course we need those images, but that would be great if you could diversify a little bit more, and
Yeah.
because then it's easier to get into stereotypes,
Yeah.
and stereotypes kill information.
Yeah.
Sometimes can even give a false information.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So I mean,
Let's.
I'm yeah,
I'll bring in a couple of questions that
yeah,
people have
yeah.
been posing. One from Jaime is: do you personally ever feel in danger while covering this project, while traveling with people? Because of course, as you were talking about earlier, people traffickers are involved in setting up some of these situations, taking advantage of these situations. Has that ever led you to feeling in danger in those situations?
Well, I try to avoid that, of course. But of course, yes, I feel in danger. And I mean, I feel that I'm not in a secure environment when I am in general in Latin America, to be honest. Like Mexico is a very dangerous place. Central
Yeah.
America is an extremely dangerous place. Um, I mean, I try to get into a situation that I want to photograph little by little, and I try to talk with colleagues or to people who know, who live there, like just understand how to move activists. So
Right.
I always try to get into a situation step by step, and then when I feel strong enough, if you want, I then start to work together with the people I photograph. And working on the train, the people I was photographing were the people that were protecting me as well,
Right.
from the police and from the guards of the railway, for example, because that's federal land, they don't allow journalists, especially photographers, to be there. So for
Right.
example, the people I was photographing were hiding my cameras in their back, and when they were seeing a police officer approaching, they were covering me with a blanket. So I will, like acting as a sleeping migrant.
Right.
And they were saying, Nico, okay, it's time. You can continue to work now.
Yeah. So the
And
people that you're photographing are active participants in their own story in that sense. And that's another question is Adrian observes that the people that you're photographing seem to be at ease with you, that they're relaxed in your presence, or at least resigned to your presence. Was that the case? Do you feel that that you developed a relationship and they became at ease with you? How did that relationship develop?
well, I think a lot of that is well, it's a great question. First of all, thank you, Adrian. I think that's in part unconscious. Like sometime it happened that I could frame a very like emotional and also responding picture with people that I've just met for a minute.
Right.
But I think that sometimes I was there because of the relationship I have created with other people. Sometimes I become a friend of a family, and not necessarily they turn into being the protagonist of the photographs that I
Right.
choose, that I edit. But I try to be very clear with what I do. And if I see that somebody is not at ease, I just don't take. I just
Right.
don't take the picture. And I think now it's a few years that I'm constantly walking the migration routes, and probably it's something that as I feel something of what the people are experiencing, they also might, I guess, I don't know, they also might be feeling something about
Yeah.
it, or
Yeah.
if there is a group of people, of course, I cannot get consent from everybody, but
Right.
I raise my cameras and I just say out loud, "Hey guys, my name is Nicolo. I'm a photographer. I'm doing a project. I'm also traveling from the place you are coming from. I'm photographing. If any of you have any problem with the photograph, please let me know."
Right.
You know,
Right.
of course, when I'm working on assignment, it's different, especially when I work for the United Nations. For
Right.
example, I need consent and pictures of the people I photograph holding their signed consent,
Right.
which, of course, in terms of consent, is great because we are hovering between the obligation of telling a story or the
Yeah.
responsibility to tell a story with hopefully powerful images, but we also have to be aware that some of these people might be fleeing persecution,
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah.
And since the places that are moving across through their journey, are not safe. They might find themselves in danger again. So
Yeah.
of course we have to be aware of that and not photographing somebody who then can be in danger because of us, you know. So I do that when I work on assignment for such organization. But that kills photography, you know, and that kills also the emotion, because you know, like sometimes it's about us, the photographer, the journalist, you know, like to have a sort of common sense and ask a few straight questions to really understand if, you know, you just don't want your pictures to be taken because you are thinking that you are not looking great in that moment, and it's fair, of course, but you know, like sometimes, especially if it's mass crossing, you know, like we are just photographing, you know. But then, you know, like when somebody is in a very dramatic moment with so many thoughts on their mind, and like I arrived there with a document and a pen, and I need you to send this document, and I need you to all this document. So why are you asking me so many questions? Why I'm signing this document? You know, so you generate sometimes more distance. You know, and you know, sometimes I take picture and then I talk later on with the people and I show them the pictures, or I take also other picture with the phone or straight send them via WhatsApp, and that, you know, like for example, the Tonito family have Facebook packed with all these photographs. They were sharing the publication. You know, then I become friends of them on Instagram, and they see also the way they portray themselves. And of course, it's completely different, but I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about a universal human condition, which is more than 100 million people are fleeing because of climate change, violence, war. So this is why I'm also looking for an aesthetic that can have a broader dialogue with the unknown people, you know.
A question from Daniel: when you're working with the individuals, particularly in a situation that can change, you've declared yourself as a photographer. They've given implied consent. They're helping you. They're hiding your camera. They're happy to have you there. Do you think in part that's because they want their story told, or they think it's valuable to have their story told? Are they thinking about what will happen to the images that you make of them?
I think so. We cannot say that having a camera generates a sort of a system of power.
Sure.
It can be balanced, it can be unbalanced. You know, like for example, you know, like I was sit next to these three women, you know, girls, and I was, you know, like I also had dust in my camera, everywhere. You know, like when it was night, it was cold also for me. You know, like so I sense that, you know, like that's the dialogue that I'm trying to create, and that's why I try to. I'm questioning a lot the massive reporting, you know, like because when I'm there, you know, like I might just say, you know, like I'm here, I'm doing this project. I know that it might be bothering, but I'm trying to make a good picture so that you will also look good in this picture, you know. So that's why I'm gonna shoot a lot of pictures. But then, if it bothers you, that's it. You know, you just tell me, and you know, like. And then sometimes people really understand that I'm looking for, you know, like framing that situation. And the captions, for example, that this family wrote for the publication were amazing, you know, like, and also the dialogue that we still have, you know, this is a memory for them of a very important, like decisive moment of their life. And in other cases, you know, like Latinos, they are very, how can I say, friendly. and also often it is with the photographs. So sometimes they also do faces and smiles. And it's not that I don't want to use those photographs. Of course, those are part of the stories, but those are a part of the stories that is the behind the scene of how then I create a real relationship with them. That's why I don't use those photographs. Sometimes I had this conversation with other colleagues. Oh, we should photograph the people also when they do these signs or do faces. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't want to do that. I mean, unless it's a great picture, because that's not. I mean, that's then they are also, like giving that sort of more shallow message to the person who is looking at the picture. You know, I prefer to find a laugh or a hug or a kiss in a more intimate moment that still talks about life, but in a less. Yeah, if you want, I mean, if you allow me, maybe superficial way, you know?
Yeah. Well, we've got a few more minutes of time, but we're coming towards the end of our time, which you've generously given, Nicoló. We've got a couple of questions about inspiration. Just a reminder, if someone wants to drop a question in quickly, we'll try and get to it before the end. Daniel was asking, have you been inspired by other photographers' work? And if so, who? And Arturo was asking about the title of the project, Exodus, which of course is the same as a major project from Salgado, who has a big project called Exodus. So your inspiration and why choose a title that was close to Salgado's title?
Well, let's start with the title. I'm bad with titles. Sometimes I end up using the titles that a magazine puts on a headline or on a cover story. And in this case, I had to, that was still in 2018. I had to send a batch of pictures for a screening in a university in Colombia. And I had to give a title. And I was with a colleague and I was like, I don't know what to put. And he told me, well, let's put Éxodo in Spanish and then we'll see. And eventually, I also used some of those photographs for the application to the WordPress photo in 2020.
Right.
And when it was awarded, they reached out to me and they said, "Oh, we are using Exodus in English." And I was like, "No, but we put the title in Spanish. Can you keep Exodus?" And they said, "No, we are translating everything in English." And since then, it just Exodus. And then you're like, I mean, it's really, I mean, of course, I respect a lot Sebastião Salgado, but it's not really about him. It's more about the Bible. I mean, and I guess both Salgado and I, and probably many other photographers lacking titles imagination. I mean, we have to give the credit to the Bible, and it's that kind of, you know, like movement of people. It's epic, biblical kind of historic event. This one, so.
Which comes back to the religious theme that you mentioned at the beginning that other people see in the work.
Yeah, and probably more on the work when it's you know, like in its totality, you know, because this is the series that I presented today. It's also sort of more editorial cuts here and there.
Yeah.
Yes. And regarding inspirations, of course, I mean, I have photographers that have inspired me a lot, even if there is no connection to their photography with mine, you know, but Kudelka, Kudelka is you know, like a sort of figure father, I guess, for the photography church, you know, and then, I mean, photographers in general that have been working for a long period of time on a project. So, you know, maybe Darcy Padilla is a photographer that I really love her work and I respect her so much. And I mean, feel it, blankets up. Like I feel an amazing connection with him and with his photography. And like when we were at when I was presenting my work at the 7 Masterclass, there was his partner, and when I was explaining how I edit, she was saying, "Oh, like Philip does the same," and I was very pleased because like his approach to photography really inspired me to become a photographer. And then like Stanley Green is another one, and Paolo Pellegrin, and Moises Saman, Gary Knight. I mean, there are so many photographers that so many different reasons have inspired me. Yang Kim, like I really, I mean, I like photographers that have also completely and more contemporary also language than mine. Antonio Facilongo, for example. But I really feel a connection with this sort of classic approach to reportage that never. It's never old, it's always out of the fashions. And like when I see Yankee King, for example, photographs, when she goes out in New York and she still comes back with the best pictures, like all the time, because I feel also that, like now there is also a lot of photography that is staged, a lot of portrait photography and still life photography mixed, creating new narratives. But sometimes, like when I look at the picture of the photographers that I mentioned and many more, knowing how I move in the field, I also understand, or I assume to understand the humanity that it requires to do that kind of photography. It's really difficult, and I respect that a lot. Like there are some photos that then becomes iconic because they can relate to a way we see the world, but not because of beyond the culture, beyond the history of the presentation, but just because they reflect a way that humanity has been trained looking at nature to see things. That's why probably it comes back to like religion sometimes, because I mean it's not that Leonardo da Vinci discovered perspective, or invented. It just kind of translated the perfection of the universe as we see it, as we look at it, and found a way through the knowledge of the perspective to duplicate it, so that we can have a representation that is closer to a universal concept of visual. Maybe, but I have doubt on everything. So even this is not a statement, like.
So final question, Nicoló. Do you see an end to this project? If so, what would be the next project that you would like to work on? And would you consider either doing the migrations project in a situation other than in the Americas, in another place, or another region or issue altogether? So,
well, it's very hard to. I mean, as I try to let the stories that I follow reveal themselves, so really following what happens and what drives me to the next situation or event or chapter of the story, so do I with my life, kind of, and the next big chapter of this project will be working on a book. I have a lot of colleagues like pressing that I should start now, but I really feel that there is still some work to do.
right.
And so I want to do it when when hopefully the story and life will reveal that it's time to start working on it, and then maybe, of course, also expanding, like the geography of my work, but according to how also my life goes. Like I didn't go to Latin America to do this story. I was living in Latin America, in Colombia, and then the story drove me to other places. So now I living this nomadic life, and I have to see where the present will drive me next. And according to that, I will take those decisions. For example, last year I really wanted to go to Ukraine because I felt something huge was happening very close by home. Even if I don't live here anymore. But and then I came to that. Probably that would have been a distraction, because even though I am European, and that's something that I am empathizing a lot with, still I have a responsibility towards this other story where maybe as I am working and walking a lot, all the continent back and forth so many times, maybe here is where like I can, through like insisting on my work and trying to do it better and better, maybe this is where I can do something that can remain also, like for you and for everybody, I mean.
Well, we're glad you made that decision. I think that, well, today we're indebted to you for your time to present this and discuss this, but overall, I think we're indebted to your commitment to be on the ground in that region, providing the bigger story that we don't see in this detail very often. So yeah, I think you made the right decision to stay with this story. We're very glad that you did so.
It's comforting to hear that.
Yeah. But Nicoló, thank you very much for your time today. It's been really a fascinating discussion, lots of important issues, and we're all going to look forward to what is the next chapter and the next way the story will be published. And we'll look forward to following up with you on that too. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone in the audience. Great questions. And we will see you again soon. Thank you, Nicoló.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.